On August 10, 2025, the summer sun burned brightly over Oceanland Marine Park, turning the surface of the show pool into a sheet of shining light. The stands were packed with thousands of visitors, all eyes fixed on the stage. At the center stood Jessica Radcliffe, calm and confident, beside Kate, a 6-ton killer whale she had worked with for nearly 10 years. To the audience, the scene looked like pure beauty and harmony, the perfect dance between a woman and a whale. Seemed like trust made real. But deep beneath the surface, something older and far more powerful than trust was beginning to stir. Orcas are natural hunters, apex predators whose senses have been sharpened by millions of years. They can detect even the faintest signs of prey. That day, Kate moved differently. Her circles in the water were slower and tighter, her focus sharper. She had caught something that no human could notice. A faint trace in the water, a signal written in blood. Out in the wild ocean, it would mean only one thing. The hunt had begun. Within minutes, the cheers of the crowd would change to screams. The carefully planned routine would turn into chaos. And Jessica Radcliffe's name would be remembered forever, as someone who discovered too late that the wild never fully forgets its true nature. If you had been standing there, would you have sensed it? Would you have felt the change before it was too late? Jessica and Kate's bond had been built over years in the turquoise water of Oceanland's main pool and proven again and again before roaring crowds. For almost a decade, the two had moved as if they were part of the same current. Jessica carried a calm, steady grace, while Kate showed raw strength and power in every motion. Their connection was something other trainers envied. A silent language built on glances, gestures, and the smallest movements of a hand. Jessica was not the kind of trainer who focused only on dazzling shows. For her, every performance was more like a conversation, a chance to earn trust again and again. Kate answered in her own way, with small signals that showed just how intelligent she was, the flick of her massive tail or a slow blink of her dark eyes. Together, they created moments that spectators often described as magical. Kate would leap out of the water in a perfect arc, droplets sparkling in the sunlight, while Jessica stood balanced on her back. The music would swell, the crowd would rise to their feet, and for a few seconds it seemed as if pure trust had tamed one of the ocean's most powerful hunters. Yet Jessica knew the truth. Trust was fragile. Orcas were not pets, and they were not domesticated animals. They were hunters by nature, creatures born to roam the open sea and follow instincts as old as the tide itself. Sometimes Jessica had caught glimpses of that raw, untamed nature. She had seen Kate snap suddenly at objects floating in the pool, or heard deep rumbling calls that vibrated through the water like warnings from the deep. Still, Jessica believed in their bond. She trusted that the years they had shared, the long hours of training, the quiet moments between shows, and the recognition she saw in Kate's dark eye had built something real, something unbreakable. What she did not realize was that no matter how strong a bond may be, it always exists in the shadow of instinct. And once instinct awakens, it does not ask for permission. On October 6th, the sky was clear and the afternoon glowed golden, as if the day had been designed for a spectacle. Oceanland Marine Park's grandstands were filled to capacity, buzzing with excitement. The smell of popcorn and saltwater drifted through the air as children clutched cotton candy, leaning eagerly over the railings, their voices tumbling over one another in anticipation. Behind the scenes, Jessica prepared for the show as she always did. Calmly, without rushing. She pulled on her wetsuit, adjusted her dive belt, and ran her fingers across her laminated cue cards, more out of habit than out of need. That day's performance was Ocean Pulse, the park's biggest and most popular show, one Jessica had performed hundreds of times. Everything felt routine, until she stepped toward the holding pool where Kate was waiting. The atmosphere seemed to change, almost too subtle to name. Slowly and deliberately, Kate surfaced, her massive head breaking through the water's surface with hardly a ripple. Kate's eyes locked onto Jessica the moment she surfaced. They were dark, unreadable, as if they carried the weight of the entire ocean. For a few seconds she lingered longer than usual, taking in a deep breath through her blowhole before slipping silently back beneath the water. Jessica smiled without concern, thinking it was nothing out of the ordinary. She did not notice the way Kate's passes grew slower, or how the orca began circling closer and closer beneath the platform. Jessica could not hear the soft bursts of air as Kate exhaled, deliberate and searching, tasting the water around her. Orcas cannot smell in the air, but in the water their ability to detect even the faintest trace of blood is unmatched. That day there was blood. It was invisible to the human trainers standing on deck, but Kate sensed it clearly. To her, it was as sharp and metallic as a whispered signal carried from another world. In the open sea it would mean only one thing: prey. The music for the show began to swell. The gates opened, and Kate slid into the main pool with deceptive calm. The opening cues went perfectly. She leapt high, performed spy hops, and slammed her massive tail against the surface, sending shimmering sheets of water onto the laughing front rows. The crowd roared, thrilled by the spectacle, never realizing the growing intensity behind her movements. Kate kept returning to Jessica's side, drawn by something more powerful than routine. It was instinct now, ancient and coiled, like a storm waiting just beyond the horizon. All it needed was the smallest shift, and everything would change. Imagine standing at the edge of that pool, realizing that the creature you trusted most was no longer looking at you as a partner, but as prey. What would you do? The first act of Ocean Pulse unfolded flawlessly on the surface. Kate's massive body cut through the water with precision, each trick flowing seamlessly into the next. She twisted in the air before crashing down in a spray so wide it drenched half the audience. To everyone watching, it was a perfect performance. But Jessica, standing just feet away, felt something was wrong. Between each trick, Kate lingered close, her dorsal fin carving slow arcs around the platform. Her gaze never left Jessica, not the watchful curiosity of a partner awaiting the next command, but an unbroken, measuring stare. Jessica adjusted her gestures, softening her movements, trying to use the subtle cues that usually reassured Kate. The orca responded, but with a stiffness, as if following out of routine rather than trust. Twice Jessica noticed Kate breaking formation, veering wide of her mark, circling back with a slow deliberation that set her on edge. From the stands, the audience noticed nothing. The music masked the hesitation, and the applause drowned any unease. But on the trainer deck, a junior staff member frowned, recognizing something unusual. Kate's pectoral fins were angled low, her tail pumping in short, measured bursts, the rhythm of a hunter. Jessica tried to shake away the fear. She reminded herself of the years she had spent with Kate, the countless hours of training, the shared moments that felt like real understanding. She remembered the quiet underwater glides where they moved in harmony. So connected she swore she could feel Kate's trust in the water around her. Yet now that trust felt thinner, fragile. In Kate's eyes, Jessica saw something shifting, like a shadow beneath the tide, reminding her that the ocean's predators never truly forget what they are. The final act was meant to be their crowning moment, the move that made them famous. It began with a simple signal. Jessica lifted her right arm, fingers slicing the air like a wave. Kate was supposed to dive deep, surge upward, and lift Jessica high into the air, where she would stand tall on the orca's back as water sprayed around them. The crowd would erupt. Cameras would capture the perfect shot. But Kate did not dive. She hovered just beneath the surface, her massive head tilted slightly, watching Jessica in silence. The pause was brief enough that most of the audience missed it. The music swelled. The stands leaned forward, waiting for the signal to resolve. Jessica gave the cue again, this time with the verbal command. At last, Kate sank from view. Relief washed over Jessica for a moment. Maybe the orca had simply been slow. But that relief shattered instantly. From the deep blue below, Kate exploded upward like a missile. Her rostrum struck Jessica hard from beneath, hurling her into the air. Gasps rippled through the stands. Some spectators even clapped, thinking it was part of the choreography. Jessica crashed into the pool, the impact knocking the air from her lungs. Before she could gather herself, a massive shadow surged below her. In an instant, Kate's jaws closed around her torso, crushing and unyielding. With a burst of raw power, the orca dragged her under. Above, the cheers turned to screams. Jessica's hands pressed against Kate's head as she tried to signal the release cue, but the orca did not respond. Instead, Kate twisted, rolling them through the water in a slow, controlled spiral. This was not a panicked thrash. It was deliberate, the precise control of a predator asserting dominance. On the trainer deck, alarms blared. A senior handler hammered the recall buzzer, sending low-frequency pulses through the pool. Kate ignored them. Her focus was absolute, fixed entirely on Jessica in her grip. Jessica's chest burned as her body screamed for air. She knew the emergency drills. Stay calm, conserve oxygen, wait for release, but panic clawed its way inside her. The water grew darker and colder around her. Her limbs felt heavy. Her heartbeat pounded in her ears. Suddenly Kate shifted, propelling them upward. For one desperate second, Jessica's head broke the surface and she gasped in air. But before she could fill her lungs, Kate yanked her back under with terrifying force. This time the pull was faster, deeper, more final. From the stands, the illusion of the show was gone. Screams rose. Parents pulled their children close, shielding their eyes. Phones recorded trembling videos, none of which would ever appear on the park's official channels. Beneath the water, Jessica's signals grew weaker. Her vision narrowed. Kate's grip remained iron-strong. The water pressed in from all sides. The world shrank to cold, crushing blue and the relentless power of the animal she had once called her partner. And in that vast darkness, instinct, silent, ancient, and absolute, had fully taken control. The world beneath the surface was one Jessica had known so well. It was a place of shimmering blues, light breaking into shifting patterns, and the steady, endless heartbeat of the ocean. But now it was no longer a place of partnership or trust. It had become a place of finality, ruled only by the laws of the wild. The underwater world Jessica had once loved was now stripped of its beauty. What had been a place of wonder was reduced to a dark, suffocating cage. Kate's grip was merciless. Her teeth clamped into the thick neoprene of Jessica's wetsuit, the crushing pressure sinking deep into bone and muscle. The orca's massive body moved with terrifying precision. Every sweep of her tail dragged them farther down, the light above shrinking into nothing more than a silver haze. Jessica kicked hard, pushing at Kate's head, trying every release cue she had drilled into the orca for years. A tap, a twist, a push. None of them worked. Kate's black eyes stared back at her, only inches away. They were empty of warmth, ancient and unreadable. The water pressed painfully against Jessica's eardrums as her chest screamed for air. Panic clawed at her mind, white-hot and uncontrollable. Tiny bubbles escaped her lips as she fought to hold on. Through the roar of her own heartbeat, she heard it, Kate's deep, resonant clicks. Collocation. The orca was scanning her, studying her, feeling every movement of her body as her strength began to fade. Then Kate turned, rolling them sideways in a wide, deliberate arc. Her pectoral fins brushed past Jessica's ribs, a chilling touch that felt almost like a predator's caress before she jerked her prey into another sudden burst of speed. The water burned against Jessica's face as her limbs grew heavier by the second. From above, muffled through the water, came the hollow clang of the emergency chime. Trainers were shouting commands, slapping the surface, sending recall tones through the pool. But none of it mattered here. Kate's world no longer followed rules or routines. It was ruled by instinct, raw, ancient, and absolute. Jessica's vision began to darken at the edges. Her lungs convulsed, desperate to draw breath, but she forced herself to hold on a little longer. Then she saw it, a flicker of light above. Kate carried her upward, and for one hopeful instant Jessica thought she might be saved. But just as they neared the surface, Kate twisted violently, rolling her body and dragging Jessica down again. This descent was faster, harsher, more final. The pressure built in Jessica's head. Her arms hung heavy at her sides. She no longer had the strength to signal. Her body went slack, suspended in the orca's jaws. Then the water around them began to change. A dark red bloom unfurled from beneath Jessica's torn wetsuit, drifting like smoke in the current. Blood. Kate's response was immediate. Her grip tightened. Her movements sharpened. What had been control now became pure hunting reflex. Above, the audience's screams merged into one unbroken wail. Below, the pool was no longer a place of performance. It was an alien world, merciless and indifferent, where partnership had dissolved, leaving only predator and prey. When Kate finally broke the surface, she did not let go. Water exploded outward, drenching the front rows. But no one cheered. Screams and sobs echoed through the stands. Jessica's body hung limp in Kate's jaws, her hair plastered to her face, her eyes closed against the sunlight. On the trainer deck, chaos erupted. Two senior handlers leaned over the pool, slamming their palms against the surface in sharp, commanding rhythms. Another pounded the emergency recall button, the piercing tone echoing through the water. It was the signal that had always brought Kate back before, but this time she ignored it. With a roll of her massive body, Kate pulled Jessica under again, vanishing into the deep blue. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Parents gathered their children, shielding their eyes. Others filmed, their phones shaking in trembling hands as they captured every terrible second. Moments later, Kate rose again. Jessica slipped free, floating motionless on her back. Trainers dove in without hesitation, their wetsuits slicing through the water as they swam toward her. One gripped her shoulders while the other supported her head, towing her quickly to the platform. They hauled her onto the deck, water pouring from her mouth in thin streams. Her wetsuit was torn, her body marked with deep bruises blooming across her ribs and stomach. A medic dropped to his knees beside her, starting chest compressions in a desperate rhythm. Another tilted her head back, forcing breaths into her lungs between compressions. Their voices cut through the panic. "Come on, Jess." Minutes dragged like hours. The audience was hurried out, their footsteps and whispers fading, but around the pool the chaos raged on. Kate floated silently in the center of the water, her massive dorsal fin cutting a dark shadow across the pool. After more than 10 minutes, the lead medic looked up. His expression told the truth before he even spoke. The calls for equipment faded. The hands pressing on Jessica's chest slowed, then stopped. The only sound that remained was the gentle lapping of water against the platform, and the unbearable silence that followed. In the hours after Jessica's death, Oceanland Marine Park was frozen in shock. The music that usually filled the air was silenced. The stands were empty. The familiar smell of salt water and chlorine now carried something heavier: grief. Trainers moved through the back corridors like ghosts, their eyes hollow, their voices reduced to whispers. Kate was transferred to a medical holding pool, hidden away from public view. She floated near the surface, motionless except for the slow rise and fall of her breaths. To an untrained eye, she looked calm. But those who knew her saw something else, a strange tension in her stillness, as if even she carried the weight of what had just happened. The investigation began immediately. Officials pored over safety protocols, reviewing footage from every angle of the show. Theories spread quickly. Some believed Jessica had given the wrong cue. Others argued that Captivity itself had created unbearable stress. The most controversial theory suggested that the faint trace of blood from Jessica's menstrual cycle had awakened Kate's predatory instinct. Marine biologists debated fiercely, some claiming the tragedy was inevitable when wild instincts were placed so close to humans, others insisting it could have been prevented.